Burke's on his feet. He looks up and gives me a grin and says, "Hey dude, you too must be from Marin." Marin County's A-OK, from Tam to Stinson all the way to MA. Fresh organic veggies in the market every day.
Welcome to the Run DMC podcast. That is the Run the Marin County podcast, a podcast about basketball here in Marin County. I am Duffy Ballard, and I am on voice memo this morning. Good morning, Dave. I know you and I are both licking our wounds a little bit from league playoff losses this week. It's been a tough week for many teams in Marin and around the Bay Area. The flu is on a rampage. Dave, I can tell you from my experience in the emergency room that we are seeing a ton of flu A. It's peaked and hopefully plateauing. So take some zinc, wash your hands, stay away from others if you're feeling sick. And if you didn't get the flu shot this year, there's always next year. So, Dave, what are we going to do? Well, I think it's time for a bit of distraction before we jump into NCS next week. So yeah, this coming Sunday will be the release of NCS seedings, and this is the first year of competitive equity. It is based on Max Prep's rankings, which are a black box. So it's a bit of an experiment. I have to admit, Dave, I'm not really happy about where our team sits at the moment, but we shall see. We shall see what happens. And in need of a bit of distraction, we are going to pivot from Marin County basketball to optimization of health and well-being through exercise and mindfulness and nutrition with an absolute superstar by the name of Kelly Starrett, also known as the Supple Leopard. So, Dave, I'll let you do the full intro for our friend Kelly. He's very gracious with his time and his expertise. So this is a wide-ranging conversation that covers the basics as well as some very technical insights into how anyone, whether it be a youth, high school, in their prime athlete, or over-the-hill athletes like you and I, Dave, how we can maximize our performance. And so since this interview last month, Dave, I have been endeavoring to try and jump a little bit every day. That was one of Kelly's pieces of advice for the older athlete. And I have been looking at hills and thinking about sprinting up and down them, but they've so far looked a little too muddy for my taste, Dave. So right now I've been looking at them with the intention of maybe in the spring, when things dry out a little bit, putting some hill running or some stair running into my regimen. All right, Dave, let's just stay distracted for the moment. No need to tell us too many tales of woe from your game last night. It's time to move on. Think about next week. There's at least one more game to go this season. And let's just spend some time with the Supple Leopard. All right. Thanks, Dave.
Duffy, it's Dave here. Thank you for the idea of, once again, the voice memo intro. Gotta love it. And yeah, let's move on. I'm not going to talk about our loss last night. I'm moving on. Next day, next play, stacking days, whatever cliche you want to use. This was a really fun interview that we did. Duffy, once again, used his vast network of people, informants, assets. Duffy has a lot of assets in the world to line us up with Kelly Starrett, the Supple Leopard. And I'll do a brief intro on Kelly. Kelly is a coach. He's a physical therapist. He's an author. He's a public speaker. He's a podcaster. He is a thought leader. Along with his wife, Juliet, they are the co-founders of The Ready State, which is a really successful athletic program. That go check out their website, check out their podcast. Their podcast is great. Kelly's hugely impactful in the world of performance therapy, self-care. He's had clients and has clients in the NFL, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. He's worked with Olympians, with Tour de France cyclists, with professional dancers, with military personnel, with mountain bikers like Kate Courtney, who we talk about, Marin's own. He's the author of a New York Times bestseller, or multiple New York Times bestsellers, Becoming a Supple Leopard and Ready to Run. And he co-wrote with his wife the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Deskbound. And this was a fascinating discussion. We touch on a lot of different topics, as you mentioned, Duff, both useful for high school athletes and kind of up and coming athletes, as well as people like you and me, Duff, who are kind of in the later stages of our athletic lives. And how do we maintain sanity and still do athletic stuff without hurting ourselves or others? Yes, jumping rope. The other thing that I was hung up on, you guys brace yourselves for how many fruits and vegetables you're supposed to eat on a daily basis. Hint, I don't do that, but that's okay. Can't thank Dr. Kelly Starrett enough. I apologize in advance for butchering his name the first time I say it in the interview, but he was very kind and gracious, and we moved beyond that. Just like I moved beyond his blatant wearing of Cal paraphernalia in my Stanford face, but that's okay. Enjoyed the episode, everybody, and then stay tuned next week when Duffy and I will do a deep dive on the NCS brackets, and we will complain, I'm sure, about where our teams ended up, and we will bask in the glory of high school playoffs. This is such a fun time of year. I will echo Duffy's sentiments that if you're sick, stay away from people. It seems like everybody in Marin County is sick or living with somebody who is sick. So stay healthy out there, drink lots of water, and enjoy this conversation with Kelly Starrett, the supple leopard.
All right, we're going. Dr. Kelly Starrett. Starrett? I don't want to butcher it.
Oh, you've already butchered it. It's too late.
Starrett.
But because we're in this realm, the way it was pronounced over the PA in high school was with U and 17 R's, Starrett with the tackle. So I'll take whatever it is.
I get Levine, so we all have our axes to bear. Yeah. Kelly and I talked about this. I'm going to forgive him his Cal paraphernalia. He's wearing it here on our Riverside chat, but we've mended fences. We're okay. We're going to move forward, right, Kelly?
We are. And the only reason it's relevant to this conversation is that we have these incredible universities in and around the Bay Area that are tremendous resources. And I want to remind everyone we need to build better connections between our premier university programs. And I actually am a coach at Cal, and I work with all of the teams there. So I get to see this transition of youth high school athlete into professional athlete. And I certainly want to talk about sort of that ephemeral division where suddenly you're 18 and then you're 18 plus one at a college program, and your life looks very different, and nothing the things that you did prepared you for that, and nothing of the way that you were trained, coached, eating, sleeping, managing had anything to do with what we see at the next level. So we have a real opportunity to take what we're learning and see if we can transmute it back to the lessons of middle school and even high school.
It's so awesome. And we were excited to have you, thrilled to have you, because a lot of our listeners so we either have high schoolers or youth kids who are listening, who are basketball players or fans of basketball players, or we have a lot of parents, right, who are listening, trying to get ideas on, okay, how to navigate the landscape of club basketball or club sports, or, how to optimize their child's experience as an athlete. And so you and your wife, leaders in this space, thought leaders, just thrilled to have you. So we already, Kelly, we gave your bio a bit before the interview, so I won't bore you with how awesome you are, all the things that you've done, but I want to jump right into getting your perspective on some things. So you've worked with incredible elite athletes across seemingly every sport, like NFL, NBA, hockey, Major League Baseball. You've worked with Olympians, Tour de France, cyclists, dancers. Taking a step back, discuss, in your view, the benefits of being a multi-sport athlete.
Well, let's define that for a second. And what are the goals? Because I think we are in an age of specialization, an age of hyper focus. And I'm not sure anyone has the wherewithal or the power or the discipline to fight that, right? And it's okay. If you love basketball, it's okay to play around. I just want to be very clear about that.
Yep.
It may not be formal, it may not, but the real question here underneath that is, what do we get from being a multi-sport athlete? And theoretically, one of the things I get is a break from my sport. I get an opportunity to just, not hammer up and down the basketball court 6 or 7 days a week, to get a chance to let my tissues normalize, right? I just get a chance to rebound from that. The second thing is that potentially we end up in another environment where I'm getting different kinds of coaching, where I'm working on a different team with a different universe. And theoretically, I'm in a different movement pattern skill where I'm integrating what I've learned from basketball in my primary sport into this other sports. And vice versa, from playing on a different surface, different hand-eye demands, different speeds, right? There's theoretically, what we're trying to say is, how do we create the best athlete? And is a multi-sport pathway the best way to create the best athlete? And when I mean athlete, I mean the kid who has all the resources to understand how to fuel, how to manage pain, how to warm up, how to prep, how to do some visualization, how to self-talk, right? But for us, we look at the best athlete is the kid who can pick up the new skill the fastest. So the faster you can be coached, the faster you can integrate a drill or a skill into your skill set, into your sort of tool bag. That's the kid we're trying to prepare. So the question is, does playing multiple sports afford me that opportunity, or do we end up seeing a deep specialization in two sports now, where I'm now on a club team in multiple sports and I don't have a chance to get strong in the gym? I don't have a chance to do free play. I don't have a chance. So oftentimes we're saying the panacea or the solution to being a multi-sport athlete or to this problem is to play as many sports as you can. But by the time you're 15 or 16, by the way, that ship has sailed unless you're already playing. It's time to specialize if you're going to be a D1 athlete. We need to ask now, what are the behaviors that allow me to continue to develop my athleticism, my skill set, my physiology? How do I get stronger, faster, quicker? And it may be not just playing more sports solves the problem. We all came out, and again, we're all from the 1900s, everyone. But one of the things that we saw was that just playing more set up. I played a lot of different sports.
Yeah.
Certainly made me a very capable athlete, but is that the best solution? What we see is that in the 1900s, when kids who played in the 80s and 90s, Gen Xers now are parents, we still had all the classic problems of the classic injuries. They looked a little different. Maybe we saw fewer ACL injuries, fewer Tommy John injuries, but we still saw that we left a lot of money on the table in terms of athletic development. Many of us weren't fueling correctly. We didn't know how to do strength and conditioning. We could have been much, much better athletes. So simultaneously, what we recognize is if you just do one thing, you're an outside hitter, you're an outside shooter, and you just do this one skill over and over again, you're not going to be very effective. And you're going to be actually have what we call a metastable or kind of a fragile construct of your body that really suddenly you're out of your experience or you get a little tweak, the whole system falls apart. So what we propose is, yes, play as many different sports as you can, but that could be skateboarding and that could be, riding your mountain bike, or it doesn't have to be a formal team sport, but do you have any other things that you do? Do you ski? Do you like to go hiking with your family, et cetera, comma? I think that the new multi-sport athlete looks at probably pretty deep in a single sport, but has a very formal strength and conditioning practice. I'm engaged in Olympic style weightlifting, especially in the Bay Area here in Marin. We have Marin Heavy Athletics as one of the best Olympic lifting schools on the planet. And we have it right here. And so my kids can go in and jump in and get formal movement, skill training, speed, change in direction, triple flexion, triple extension, and simultaneously still specialize in their sport. Caroline is a junior. She's on her way, probably my youngest, to play college water polo. And so what we're thinking is, how do we best prepare her? Me putting her in another concurrent sport is not that way at this time.
Do you think playing multiple skill sports is beneficial, or because I'm thinking of, okay, so basketball, where Duffy and I spend most of our time thinking and dorking out. Basketball is a skill sport. Obviously, it requires tremendous athleticism, but it's a skill sport. You have a sport like, every sport is a skill sport in some ways, but something like cross country, swimming, with more of an endurance sport, it's a skill, but it's less hand-eye coordination. It's more mental and physical conditioning. So do you think that there's a benefit to playing like a skill sport and a sport like that, or multiple skill sports? Just does it matter what the sports are, I guess would be my question.
Early on, it probably doesn't matter. I think let's ask the question, what's our intent? So our intent is, and Juliet and I, my wife and I, think a lot about this. We think sports makes better society. It makes more capable humans who know how to work on a team, interact, be team members, be good teammates. How do you deal with defeat? How do you put off, fun? How do you learn how to suffer? How do you fuel? How do you deal with self-talk? So theoretically, we have a set of skills in this high school thing that may, for a lot of us, end when we're done with high school, right? So the goal can't be my only success is if I become a college athlete or not. The goal is, how do I wring the most out of this middle school, high school athletic experience? And that means I become a capable person, and I use sport as a framework to create a more robust individual, because I know how to train. I know how to lift. I know how to eat. I know how to, right? I can do these things. And more importantly, and this is so crucial, and the is always missing, and the word that you used was appropriate, play. Should I play multiple sports? And maybe I play an endurance sport. But what we've done is stuck the play out of all sports. And if you look, basketball is actually one of the few sports where we see a lot of free play. In fact, free play is highly valued, and that those skills that I end up carrying on in a formal basketball setting are trained and platformed, outside, just in, shooting around with friends. So number one, what we can say is, if my primary sport is basketball, look, more of everything is going to help basketball, right? It's really great that you have all this developed skill set. But if I'm trying to make you explosive, you want to play in college, I'm not going to have you swim. I think that's going to make you a worse basketball player. So eventually we can get to that conversation. But early on, I'm like, yeah, you should absolutely swim, and you should be on the track team, and you should, let's go ahead and be a little bit more thoughtful later on. But early on, I don't think it matters. I'm like, what are you stoked about, and who are you stoked doing it with? And that is the most important feature.
Yeah, Kelly, just getting back to, you mentioned this earlier, like the mental break aspect of this. And just think about, say, for example, your daughter. How do you assess like an athlete who needs a mental break, for a month or two to just refresh, and when to implement that and how to implement it? And maybe it's not playing another sport, maybe it's just a break. How do you recommend handling that for parents in particular?
This is such a good, important conversation, because, no fault of the industrial sport youth complex, but there's a couple breaks at Christmas. There might be one in the summer. But for example, we use water polo. Right now, it's a year-round endeavor where we come out of the high school program, and we have a couple weeks before winter water polo club season starts. Then we'll get a little break in spring where our kids will swim and play some water polo. Then we're right into the Junior Olympics. And then JOs takes us right to the beginning of school again. So to your point, one of the questions is, are you sitting down as a family before every season and say, was this a positive experience? Did we love this? We're making this commitment as a family to do this as a family. You're playing basketball, but it's a family. It's the first team. And we want to make sure that the family team is met. And one of the things we want to ask is, was this a pleasurable experience, a positive experience for everyone? Number two is, every week we sit down and say, how are we doing? What's the week look like? I think if your kid is so stoked and driven, my daughter plays goalie and she loves playing goalie. She loves it. She likes practice. She likes playing goalie, and goalie is different than just pure physiology. It doesn't have to do, her heart rates and outputs during games are insane. She'll spend 17 minutes with her heart rate above 90%. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see the outputs. But what we'll see is sort of micro dosing of like, hey, I just came out this quick tournament. Now we're back into the grind. Where are we putting the brakes on? How do we support kids? And that starts with a conversation about how you feeling. Because really these things should be fun, and not always practice is not always fun and joyful, but it should be a positive experience. We worked our asses off, that was so fun. I did it with my best friends and it was great. And I love my coach. We should be looking at, are there breaks? Is 2 or 3 weeks of break long enough gap? And that's going to be individual for you about figuring that out in terms of you sitting down with the family and asking yourself, do I need enough break, and how long is that? And it's okay to say, I'm sitting out this club season or sitting out this section of club. And it may feel like an arms race, but you might have to say, hey, I want to do something else or I'm burnt. And because I think we have to ask ourselves, what's the goal? If I had my choice, every high school kid would be in 3 sports. We'd have a fall sport, winter sport, spring sport. And that sport could be weightlifting, yoga, dance, right? It could be I'm playing JV thirds, which is a non-competitive volleyball. But there's no reason why we can't be active year round. The real question is, what does that look like? In fact, I would argue that if we had kids who played more year round and were exposed to more things, we would have better athletes. So the real question is, what is it you're going to put in with your family? Is that enough time and break to get some perspective on the sport and be excited about your primary sport?
It's great. That's great perspective. So now I want to shift gears kind of and now talk about people who maybe they did play multiple sports, but became super elite at their sport. So like the one name that Duffy and I were talking about earlier was Kate Courtney, Branson grad Marin kid, mountain biker, went on to the Olympics, like one of the elite mountain bikers in the world. You've worked with Kate, I believe, and other athletes like that, just who achieved this elite level, like highest level in the globally. What separates those athletes? What characteristics?
Oh, I think what we all want to hear is the egalitarian, that if I eat the right snack and I have the right coach at the right moment, that I too can be elite. I just want to remind everyone that genetics are not equal, and that Kate is a good friend of ours and a mutant. I just want to point out that she's a mutant, and her capacity to suffer and her capacity to generate wattage and train and do all the hard pieces, there's very few people like that. What we start to see, though, I think, when people get good, is that they find something they really like, and that there's a feedback loop where they get some positive affirmation. They like the training. They're naturally good at it. Kate's build is pretty much ideal for mountain biking. And so suddenly what you see is a lot of the things line up, right? Good coaching, right moment. She famously will talk about the fact that her husband, Will, he was a freshman, but he was captain of the team as a senior. And when she started mountain biking, she'd been mountain biking with her dad. Part of the culture kept her in it, that she had really excellent leadership. She had really excellent senior models that created an environment that was really compelling and really fun. And then she got to a place where she'd won national championship as a high schooler and could decide, do I want to do this? And really, sometimes I think some of our elite athletes, my daughter, Georgia, who's a sophomore at Michigan, captain of her water polo team, definitely could have played in college, but was like, that's not for me. I'm not doing that. And I think it's really great that she was like, I love that. I love training. I love everything about it. But why would I be a professional athlete in college when I can just go to Michigan, study economics and party and have a great time, right?
Yeah.
My younger daughter's like, I would be super bummed if my water polo experience ended after high school. And you suddenly see that it has to be driven by you. And then when that starts to happen, what we do start to see is that there's an ecosystem that supports that athlete. We start to see more focus on strength and conditioning. We start to prepare our bodies and our minds to be a little bit more professional. We have to think more about recovery. We have to think more about sleep. We have to think more about Where am I going to get advanced coaching? Do I love this? Am I in a community? What's happening in terms of my desire to play at this next level? And what we start to see is a constellation of behaviors that start to support and nourish that next level athlete. There will be mutants out there who don't do anything and are real good kids. Don't look at them. The best athletes in the world all start to get real about all of these essential athletic behaviors that sometimes we don't put a value on. What we put a value on is win and loss. But one of the things that we talk about with all of our college athletes is owning your 50%. Are you prepared for your coach to get to coach you today? Have you had breakfast? Have you had snacks? Did you go to sleep in time? And honestly, those metrics often fall apart and they don't support next level play, even if you have the genetics or the desire. We see a lot of kids who get to college and they're like, I did it. I won the thing. I'm in college. I got the award. And we're like, oh no, it just starts for you now. Now you've just been good enough to get to college to be coached at the college level.
I was watching a high school basketball game a couple nights ago, and I saw a kid who I've coached before, and he's playing great. And the first thing he said to me after the game was, I'm playing with so much confidence right now. And that really struck me that I didn't say it, he did. This is a sophomore in high school, which I thought was a really astute, thoughtful thing to say. But it made me think about, so when we're talking about these elite athletes, and I hear what you're saying about Kate, and, people said that about Lance Armstrong as well, just like his heart could, just his ability to tolerate pain and withstand that, was just next level, incredible. But the mental side, confidence, the ability to come back from a mistake, to deal with pressure. How do you train the mental side of athletes? And do you when you're working with these elite athletes, how much of it is the mental side of it?
Well, I'll tell you that eventually everyone is real good at the top. And you might have someone who is, a generational talent, but everyone, to win a world championship right now or to win an Olympic medal is the hardest it's ever been in any sport. There might be some hidden sports out there where you could just outwork the competition and you surprised everyone with your prowess and your abilities, but that's not really what's happening anymore. And we're starting to see now, the top 10, you could almost mix up. You take the top 10 in a sport and just throw them out and you see like who's hot, who has the confidence, who's on a roll, who's not battling an injury. And so one of the things that really does separate the top athletes is this mental preparation where we're practicing. I think what ends up happening in middle school and sometimes in high school is you show up and you're like, okay, I'm going to be great today. And I think it's an old Jack Nicklaus quote or something. He's like, you don't walk up to the tee and golf and say, today I'm going to smash the ball. And I see the difference even in, we're playing a little scrimmaging, a local thing. Caroline, our water polo goalie, really strong mindset. She's just a mutant in terms of her ability to just remain calm, even though she's the goalie. But when there's a big game coming up, I start to see her coalescing into a little bit more of a sort of fierce person. She knows she needs to put it on, and that happens 2 days out. So what we start to see then is parents, coaches, athletes need to have some formal training and some formal process to talk about process, to talk about winning and losing. How are you in the car? Did you set goals before you got in there? What's your self-talk look like? Famously, we hear every once in a while that parents will bring 2 cars and mom will always bring a car because kids don't want to go home with the dad when they lose, right? And so what you have to start to see is that this mindset preparation breeds confidence, plus having sort of the rough skills to set yourself up to then potentially have this transcendental moment on the pitch. I'm a physical therapist by training and a performance coach, which means I live in the weight room and nutrition, all that. But if I went back to school now, I'd become a performance psychologist. There's no doubt that is the greatest opportunity for our athletes to make massive gains. I would say nutrition, strength training, and that mental performance. And my favorite resource is Michael Gervais, who is an incredible resource and has lots and lots of resources about how we might get in a better position psychologically.
Yeah, for those that might be coaching or parents at the high school level, or either perhaps even beyond, for athletes who maybe haven't had any training ahead of time, are there techniques that can be used in the moment, either before a big game, just taking a little bit of meditation or visualization, or at halftime in a stressful moment? I know we had a game this past week with Archie, and our guys were behind at halftime. We weren't playing great, and there's just a lot of bad body language and just kind of people hunching their shoulders, and so we just had them do a simple power pose of arms behind the head. In the moment, that was kind of what we could think of without having a lot of formal training. It seemed to maybe help. I think they relaxed a little bit. But speaking to basketball specifically, or any sport, you have suggestions for that type of intervention that can be spur of the moment, or is that just not a good idea without training?
No, absolutely. I think the problem is most coaches, and there are a lot of volunteer coaches, have never had any formal training in any of this, and they're just making it up, or they're regurgitating what their abusive, coach said in 1984, and they just default to their training. And I'm like, holy crap, you have no training in this. Listen to how you're talking to these kids. These kids will die for you if they believe that you will die for them. So there's one thing that I will say is one of my favorite books is called Belonging by Owen Eastwood, and it's a mandatory read. It talks about the power and potential of belonging, of being in a tribe, of being in a community, of having kind of common story, of understanding what your goal is, and how important that is for, because it doesn't always go. Sometimes you get beat, sometimes you lose. I think those are two different things. Losing is when you play like dog crap, and getting beat is when a really superior team destroys you. I get beat all the time. I hate losing. So, one of the things I would say is, if we're waiting till the competition moment to have this first conversation about body language or about breath, right, or about being centered, it's way too late. Way, way, way too late. We want, and let me give you an example. At the Olympics for water polo one year, one of the maybe it was a World Cup, or it wasn't an Olympic final, but one of the things that was happening is one of the games was running late, and our women had warmed up, and then they go into double overtime, and everyone just kind of sits and watches the game right from the side, and they're waiting to go out, waiting for this game to go out and finish in front of them. And lo and behold, what happens is everyone's not in the moment, no one's connected, we haven't warmed up, right? We've lost all the kind of vibe, and they go out and guess what? They play like crap. So the head coach says, we'll never do that again. Instead, says, when these teams run over, we'll just start our warm up again, and we'll just go ahead and go through the process and stay connected. So I think we have to have a plan in place, and we have to talk about it. And that's why we practice. And practice isn't just about drills or just about conditioning. It has to be about the bigger game. And it clearly can't eat up all the time, but we say, hey, I want to talk about how we're going to deal with a stressful situation. And we're going to look around. We're going to see our body language. I think that was really great. We're going to look each other in the eye and say, we got this, right? We do a formal breathing practice before our games. We're playing Stanford on Saturday. And, I'll do 10 to 15 minutes of formal breath work to get us centered, to come together. When we do that, that's how we know we're starting a campaign of the day. I think it's really important that, when our women come to the sideline, for example, we take a pause and we don't jump right in and start talking. We just shut up and take a breath. So literally we have some of the best players on the planet taking a moment, shutting their mouth, taking some big breaths in, just recentering. Then we have a conversation instead of going to the bench and be like, right? And so
Right.
having some structures in place that your athletes understand what they're for, I think really goes a long way. Adam Wright, who is an incredible coach down at UCLA for men's and women's water polo, during timeouts and things, will pull his athletes out of the water, and they'll go behind a place, and they don't stay in the water and huddle. They get out of the water and move so they can have this kind of private moment, and it resets and reframes. And you'll see them having a terrible quarter. They'll get out, they walk around the corner, and it just breaks that, and it gives them a chance to get back together and recenter and come back. So what we're looking at is, as a coach, how do I motivate the people I'm working with to work together and do heroic things that's all the preparation. But as an athlete too, I need to know how I'm going to settle down, how I'm going to calm down. And I'm probably
Yeah.
going to need to be part of my official training. And often it's not.
That's awesome. Awesome lessons. Like one of the things that I impart on the kids that I coach high school girls basketball. I'm constantly reminding them to sometimes it's just make the simple play and not try to do too much. And I think as the pressure builds in games, you try to do too much and be the hero. And sometimes it's just, make the simple play, the play that's right in front of you.
It's not the first time they've heard that. They're like, okay, let me,
Right.
what's my default? We'll hear, breath, timing, like there'll be some mantras that, you work with as a coach. When I say this word, this is what this means, right? Pulling people back. I just think, what we don't do a lot of is talk about formally, what's your mindset in the game? How are you handling that? Where do we go?
Yeah.
What's our after action report? Shout outs. I'm fortunate enough to work with some really great military units at the elite Army group, the elite Navy groups. They are so meta aware of process, and that they go through, and after an event, after a practice, after a run, you literally will hear athletes say, I could, or their warfighters say, I could have done that better. And the first thing they own is they have a self-reflective mechanism built into the training where a coach isn't leading, the leader, the guy is saying, I could have done that better. Hey, I didn't cover that as well. I got that next time. You did a really great job there. And suddenly there's a feedback mechanism that's happening. And so that's an allegory for, I want to put those things in so that process is baked in. We're not just doing gassers until someone vomits, but we're really being aware of what's happening and what the process is and how we're communicating. One of my good friends is Brett Bartholomew of Art of Coaching. He's an NFL coach, was one of the senior coaches at Exos. And one of the things that he has realized now in his expertise is in communication. How are we talking? How do we manage different relationships? How do we manage different personalities? That coach has they usually have one plan. I'm going to shout at everyone. I hope that works, right? Because that's the only thing I've ever been trained in. And honestly, we need to become much better master communicators about when to bring people along, and then have them be able to transmute that. So that the kid says, I was in the beginning, I had a big test today. I did my breathing that I do before I take a free throw, and I crushed the test. I'm like, okay, now we're transferring skills that seemingly disparate to the things that really matter, which is being a better human.
It's fantastic. So your use, I'm fascinated by, studying the SEALs and military teams, and the use of the after action report is something that I've actually done in my work before. And I've thought about using that for my teams. I'm glad you brought that up, right? Just it could be after every practice even, right? What did we want to accomplish?
Right.
What did we do? Why? What can we do better next time? And it's not personal. It's specific feedback to the performance of every member of the team. And it's a really useful tool to analyze performance and think about ways that you can do things better.
I played in football for a couple of years. This is in the late 80s in Virginia. And I was in that football league. Remember the Titans football league, right? So it was that was it. I played the Hayfield Hawks, and I was with Mount Vernon, and it was a very 1970s, 1980s football, right? Yes, sir. No, sir. And, one of the things is that model was you will do what the coach says, and all of that was hidden from the player. And I don't think the coach needs to be a coach and take on and manage what she can manage, but I want to be let in on the goals of the day. And so if we huddled up before practice and said, here's our goal today. This is our intention for the practice, and here's what our conditioning is going to be. Everyone can wrap their head around it, right? But I've just played both ways. I'm on every special teams, and now the coach is going to have me run until he feels like we're tired. I'm like, you lost me. I'm not in. This is dog crap. Like, how dare you? I just blew myself out of practice, and now I'm going to run until you feel like you're tired. So I think telling kids the plan allows them to be like, okay, this is what we got to get done. And then you're absolutely right, circling up afterwards and saying, hey, that was great. I really love the way you did that. We executed this one skill that we wanted to do. and then give everyone a minute. It doesn't have to be this formal thing. It could be 3 minutes where it's just a speed dump on shout outs, having people compliment, recognize, hey, that player, what this teammate was doing great. And as a coach, you have just one more moment to say, hey, that was an insane effort. I'm really proud of you. We didn't accomplish our goal today, but we're going to get more of it tomorrow. That leads that human being to go out. And remember, this may be the only unconditional positive regard a child gets, a youth athlete gets. And if you're the coach and you're not given that unconditional positive regard, man, it's going to be really hard for me to want to empty the tank for you. And that doesn't mean you don't have to have high standards as a coach. Like, this is like, if you come work with me, you're going to bleed through the eyes. We're going to suffer, but I'm right there with you. And it's not punishment, but simultaneously, I'm going to be in your ear saying, I think you can go harder. Look, you went harder. Great job, right? You've got to make this a positive experience. Yes or no?
Absolutely. And I think it's, as coaches, we always want our kids to think like coaches, right? And I think that's different. Maybe that's changed over the years. Kelly, I mean, we're all kind of roughly the same age, right? And grew up in the same period where back in the old school, it was the coach's way or the highway, and do as you're told. But now, I know for me, when I'm coaching, I want my kids thinking like coaches on the floor. I want them telling me what's going on. They're the ones on the floor, not me, right? But having some, we call it basketball IQ, but just sports IQ, right? Time and score situation, understanding dynamics of the game, and being a coach on the floor. It's
not lecturing, not lecturing or giving dissertations. Kids need to play. We need to run the drill. And that means you have to be very, very competent as a coach. And it is tricky. And by the way, you don't have to nail it the first season, but hopefully by your 20th season, where you get so much out of coaching young people that it's, amazing. Last year, I had the privilege. I'm on the staff of the women's water polo team, and Corley Simmons is one of the few women head coaches on the planet. We're starting to see more of them. But last year, we played for a national title. We played against UCLA in the NCAA finals, and it was the first time a woman head coach had been there. So we're trying to make history. And we lose the game by a couple goals, and we're in the locker room and circled up with the whole team, and everyone is weeping. Not because we lost. No one gave a shit. In fact, we had a lot of athletes say, I would rather lose on this team 100 times than ever be on that team, right? But what people said was they felt so supported. They felt so loved. There was so much sort of respect that moment felt emotional for everyone, not because we lost the game, but because we had gotten to this place where we were so intact and so connected to each other. And then afterwards, you could see like the barbecue and things. These aren't looking like kids who lost the national championship. These were kids who played their brains out and came out intact, because it can't just be winners and losers. It has to be, hey, we did the best we could and the game didn't go our way, but look at all these things. I want to come back to that feeling over and over and over again. And I obsess about getting my kids there to the place where they can own their own experience. And now I'm a collaborator. And that's a really important piece. I want to get to a place where we're collaborating with our team. I'm still the head coach. I'm still the coach. But the kids have a lot more input formally about what's going on, right? About what we need. And kids are smart. The All Blacks, I'll take it as an example. I work with the All Blacks, which is a rugby team out of New Zealand, everyone.
Of course, yeah.
The coaches put in a coaching package early, right? They work their asses off. But towards the end of the week, there's a captain's practice. The practice is entirely run by the athletes, right? There's a session. There's like a 20-minute session where there's a skill development where each athlete has to submit sort of a game plan of what they're going to do to work on a specific skill individually for 20 minutes, right? So that there's a piece where I'm like, I need to work on my threes. Sometimes we don't get enough threes. One 20-minute chunk of practice is kids having some autonomy saying, I really need to work on this. I need to change this, right? So that happens. But then by the time this game happens, coaches are not on the field. And what we see is that the athletes have to own the plan, run the plan, be able to do the plan. Of course, you can't get there when you're 16, but the goal is ultimately that I'm going to play with the teammates I have. We're so simpatico and on the same plan that if we get behind, we're going to look and get feedback from you. But if you're just moving me around the court, my IQ is crap.
As Dave knows, I've spent some time over in New Zealand, lived over there for 2 different long stints. I've seen the All Blacks play. And so, curious, do any of the players on the team in that 20-minute skill development time period, do they spend it working on the haka so that they can be really intimidating before the match?
So what's interesting is that is already taken care of. There's already haka practice. No one actually needs to, because it's such
Wow.
a field.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
what I want to do is I want to look at the moments where we can gel and come together as a team, right? And one of the things that we do is I do during my warm-ups, our warm-ups look like we're getting ready for an MMA fight. They don't look like we are sweating, it's fun, it's hard, we're battling, there's contact. When our girls get in the pool, we swim down, everyone's going to be good and fit in the first quarter, but we can overcome people in the first quarter because we're so prepared. So when you play us in the first quarter, you should feel like an avalanche, and that your psychology is like, I can't hang with these women for 3 more of these, right? So part of that means we sit together and we have a specific chant we do afterwards, which is like a little mini haka. I don't want to culturally appropriate the haka, right? We're predominantly a Caucasian water polo team I'm just trying to give honor there, but there is something where we come together and flip the switch, where we're saying, okay, now we're in this formal movement, formal time where we're dogs, and then we'll get together right after the game and we've high-fived the other team. We're like, cheers, San Rafael. And then we get together and we look each other in the eye when we win, we lose, and we just say, hey, great job. We just have a moment where we own it, and then we become people again, right? But to your point there, we practice the ritual of slipping into being a competitor. That's starting to happen, switch, and then we have an off switch when we get together, and then the coach does her talk afterwards, right? There's still one more talk to happen, but it's owned by the players. Players are coming together to start. We're coming together to finish. We have this discrete thing. And then, and so I want to think more about that, because that's how you build culture and how you build athletes who are ready to show up and destroy and have the most fun. And look, winning is fun, but playing great and winning is the most fun.
Love it. I'm ready to go. All right. I'm going to shift gears again, Kelly. Let's talk about average athletes like me and Duffy. Not you, Kelly. So we got, the weekend warriors, like Duffy and I play in adult league basketball. We have a bunch of people who listen who are, our age, 40s, 50s, still trying to, whether it's tennis, golf, pickleball, whatever it is. What advice would you give just people in middle age who are trying to be athletic and healthy in terms of recovery, staying healthy? Just give me the answer, Kelly. Help me out.
Everyone who's under 18, close your ears. It's we laughed at in the 80s. There was in the bodybuilding, powerlifting, strength athlete community, that was steroids and cocaine. That's what we found out to be very effective.
That's Duffy's cocktail every day.
Simultaneously, it turned out it was really hard to keep weight on athletes and sort of illegal, and it caused some psychological problems. But really what we want to say is, if I want to be a competitor and move my body to play as an adult, why would that look different than what I did as a high schooler or as a college athlete? Am I getting enough sleep? 1 or 0? And one of the things that if you just take a step back and you look at the word for night in a lot of the romantic languages, it's the word for 8 plus the letter N. So you take the word 8 in German, it's acht, and then you put an N and you get Nacht, right?
French, wheat.
Noche, you'll suddenly see, you're like, this is so crazy. It's almost like human beings have been sleeping for 8 hours. And one of the things that we'll say is that for adults, if we're trying to change our body composition, and more importantly, have tissues that can withstand the playing that we want to do. Our brains still think we're 19, but we don't have tissues that can handle that necessarily if we're not conscious about it. First order of business is I need you to lay in bed for 8 hours and not look at your phone. That's your homework number 1. You want to still I don't care if you sleep for that whole time. You'll have to retrain. I need you to lay in bed for 8 hours and not look at your phone. By the way, that's still a recommendation for all our athletes, all our young athletes. And our young kids, growing bodies, you need 9 or 10 hours of sleep. If you're trying to change your body, do anything, 7 is you are a survivalist, out on the ledge, you barely alive. That's what 7 hours of sleep is. So number two, I want to look at your nutrition. We have 2 goals for all our athletes, and it doesn't matter your age. Ready for this? We want you to eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables every day. So you're going to have to get a scale. That's not 800 grams of carbs. That's 800 grams of fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
A banana is like between 80 and 100 grams. 4 big apples, you're there. But our athletes don't get enough micronutrients, and they don't get enough fiber. And if you want to have tissues that are bond-proof, you better have vitamin C and minerals and polyphenols and fiber. Go ahead.
What about, do these powders, the Simply Green, does that
Nope,
count?
doesn't
Or does
count.
it need to?
Doesn't count. That's a vitamin. That's
Too
super
bad.
Kelly, come on.
Count it towards, hey, this is a vitamin, but I still need you to get fiber. I need you to get all the things. And those things are great at feeding your gut. Totally awesome.
How about cooked vegetables? Is that okay? Or do they have to be raw vegetables?
No, it doesn't have to be raw. You don't have to go be a raw-tarian. Frozen vegetables work. Beans count. White potatoes count. If it's fried, doesn't count, right? If it's sugar, it doesn't count. So
all right, so fries are out.
Fries are unfortunately out, but a baked potato is in. So
Okay.
suddenly we got 8 hours of sleep, and you're going to hear a thing. We call these base camp behaviors. Second,
okay,
got to eat 800 grams of fruits and vegetables. It means I send my daughter out every day with an apple that she eats in her first period, right? I can't get enough fiber and micronutrients to have my kid. Then I need you to get 1 gram of protein per pound body weight, especially if you're an athlete. And where you're going to be like is, that's so much food. Boo-hoo, I'm so full. I have to eat all of this protein. Yeah, that's right. I want you to keep your muscle mass, keep your bone density. I want you to have soft tissues and connective tissues and guts that work. That's 1 gram of protein per pound body weight. And good luck with that. You're going to have to eat a lot of food. Go ahead.
So any recommendations? So I encountered this with my daughter, who was a competitive mountain biker, met Kate Courtney a couple times. Kate Courtney, very much an idol for my daughter, but she became a vegetarian in her sophomore year of high school and really found it hard to get the protein initially. Do you have any tips for those? Because I think there are a lot, especially female athletes, who are vegetarian and trying to get enough protein.
So we always are asking anyone who's a vegetarian, are you a vegetarian because you're trying to change your body composition? A lot of girls will say, I want to be skinnier, so I'll just pull all the protein out of my diet. And that's an easy way to lose a lot of muscle mass for sure. But we have a lot of people who just don't like meat. That's fine. So here's eggs, here's cottage cheese, here's yogurt, and here's how we supplement with protein powders. And that's a perfect way to just juice the system a little bit. And that's where we put a high quality protein powder that's highly palatable, or a Fairlife shake, or Pioneer Pasture shake or a Nuri shake. It doesn't matter. These pre-bought shakes, 30 grams of protein, drink it during and we'll see that we can get a lot more in. It's tricky. I want my kids to be kids, and I still need to hit their minimums of protein and micronutrients. I pick up Caroline in the car. There's always a shake ready to go. She starts drinking right away. So we just have to make sure that we're hitting these minimums. We also want our adults to walk around a little bit more. What you're doing is you're sedentary and you're getting off the couch and trying to play like Michael Jordan. And I guarantee you have tissues that are not loaded. You're adapting. You're congested after your run and then went back to the desk. So we need 8,000 steps a day as our minimum to just decongest the tissues. Then you're starting to see the 8s here. I need you to jump rope every day. And if you're not jumping, that's a problem. And you do some form of jumping every time you train. That can be side to side, over a line, Olympic lifting, kettlebell swings, all forms of jumping. But what we see is that as we get older, our tissues, we're not respecting our tissues enough. You need to get a blood panel and really understand what's going on. But you're also not training like an athlete. You're playing like an athlete, but you're training like a middle-aged person on her Peloton. That does not get you ready for pickleball, and you will destroy yourself. So I need you to go out and play Frisbee or play spike ball or have lateral movement and jumping and throwing medicine balls and decelerating, moving quickly in order to protect yourself over the long haul.
We had Kelly, one of our guests, a college basketball coach named Paul Trevor, and he was saying ropes don't lie. Meaning when he wants his guys on his team, he coaches college basketball. Like when they want to kind of get to work, they just jump rope for 10 minutes because ropes don't lie. You can't cheat.
I tell you what I love about that is oftentimes, remember that we have a bunch of athletes who are coming in and they're student athletes. Their primary sport is not their only thing in their life. They have other things. They need to go have friends. They need to go out to parties. They need to be humans. So what I like to do is get right to it. And jump ropes are really simple. In fact, the ropes I use are just like 8 and 10 foot lengths of old climbing rope. So it doesn't have some fancy handle. It is a rope that it's not a speed rope. We can jump rope like that. And the first thing we do is we start moving right away. We do a breath practice, yes, to set us up. Then our ropes come out. And one of the things I'm going to point everyone out to is there's a coach friend of mine named David Weck, and he invented something called rope flow. And I'm going to point out that you don't have to become a rope flow specialist at Burning Man. It feels definitely like you can have an identity where you carry your rope flow and get made fun of. But the rope spinning, jumping, landing, twisting, we get so much movement in the body very quickly with these heavy ropes, doing some of these basic rope flow ideas. And again, I have tweaked it. But what we want to do is get people hot and jumping and moving. And I want thousands of rotations of things. I want the body twisting. I want loading on one leg. The jump rope is the easiest and fastest way to get there for sure. I'm going to also point you that your warm-ups suck, everyone. They suck. They're not fun. They don't gamify anything. You don't teach any skills. There's a gentleman named Rhett Larson who has a concept called No Zombies warm-up. And he has just launched a product this week called the No Zombie Warm-Up Library. And it gives you 1,000 ideas about how to warm your kids up and get them attuned. Because ultimately, and I saw your question, Doug, is that we need to get everyone corralled into this moment where we're sharing the same thing. One of my favorite coaches, will tell a story and then I'll stop talking, is Anson Dorrance, who is the head coach
North Carolina.
at UNC, right? One of the winningest coaches in the history of the world in women's soccer. And he scripts his practice down to the minute. They're 90 minutes. They're very dense. He doesn't do 3-hour trainings. He's like, people are crap after 3 hours. But 90 minutes is very hard. But he has the first thing he does is he would have his women jog an 800. And that's not a really good use of time. But what he found was when he pulled it out, his practices went to crap. Because during that 800-meter run, women were transitioning to be soccer players. They were coming out of their lives. They were coming out of their personal interactions and drama and worries. And it gave them, roughly how long does it take to jog 800? Not very long, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, right? If you're a soccer player. And that transition time made it so we had much better practices. And what we want to do with our warm-ups is transition our athletes from their home lives, from their school lives, from their personal lives into being what it means to be a teammate. And we can do that with jumping right away for sure. Or better play, better warm-ups.
That's beautiful. So specifically, very selfish question here, although I also have another question. Maybe I'll just give them to you both and you can take whatever order you want. But we need to know how you got your other identity, the supple leopard. That's number one. But before I pass it back to you, for me and Dave, playing maybe basketball once or twice a week, we want to be as supple as we can as 50-year-old men on the court. So we're not going to look supple, but we hope we can feel a little supple. What is the ideal sort of routine for us, jumping? You said jump every day, but it's probably only a few minutes, right? Maybe 3-5 minutes. Is it jump rope one day and then box jumps another day and then lateral jumps the next day? How could you script our week of jumping to have us as ready as we can without sort of burning out those already sort of taut joints and muscles and tendons?
Well, if you're going to go play basketball and you can't handle 5 minutes of jump roping every day, we have a problem. So, it doesn't have to be a lot, but I want some every day, right? For adults, I want to keep the engine idling. I don't want to turn it off. That's really important. Number two, does your training look like the training of athletes? And what we see is, no, it does not. Everything is done slowly, right? We're doing slow tempo goblet squats. We do like ring rows. We do like what looks like geriatric physical therapy. And frankly, that's not enough. One of the things that we do, and based on our model and in Supple Leopard, Becoming a Supple Leopard, which is the book we wrote in 2013, is that I have a concept called the archetype concept, which are foundational shapes that make up all the other shapes. So your shoulder doesn't do that many things. It goes over your head, it goes behind you, it goes out to the side, it goes out to the front. That's all the shoulder does. It might go from position to position there, right, as I transfer, and it rotates and the elbow bends and elbow straightens. Otherwise, that's the whole movement language of the shoulder. So as I look at your training, what I'm going to ask you is, are you exposing the shoulder to all the things the shoulder should do? And guess what? Overhead pressing and pull-ups, check. Push-ups, check. Bench press, rows, check. Dips, check. Suddenly you're like, oh, I'm cleaning. I'm doing hang cleans with a dumbbell, or I'm hang clean with a barbell. But the bottom line is, I have touched all of the positions and shapes in my physical practice that help me to be able to expose my tissues to having a full movement language when I want them. And what we see often is that we have these huge blind spots in our training. The same thing is true for the lower body. And then the second thing we'll add is there any speed component to that? I think, frankly, that going to the gym and doing some listicle, I have 15 exercises I need to do. It's so boring. I don't think it needs to look like that. I think there are really succinct 20 and 30-minute sessions where I can do brutal conditioning, either sprints or on the bike or on the rower. And I can do it for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2-minute pieces. And then I'm going to stand off. I'm going to do a set of heavy 3x5 power cleans or muscle snatches or box jumps or something I'm comfortable with. And suddenly that starts to look a little bit like sport. I'm having to control my body with high cardiorespiratory demands, high metabolic demands, and I'm going to add some speed component to here. And then rinse and wash and repeat. We'll get 3 or 4 times a week, times months, and we're going to get a lot of progress. But if you don't expose your tissues to a full pantheon of all the things they do, you're going to be exposed as soon as you play sport. And so what we're really looking at is, what's my base in the gym where I can, or my garage where I have time, 40 minutes, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. But then I probably need to go out and make sure that I'm cutting and shooting and exposing my tissues to the things. Let me be very clear, everyone. If you're playing pickleball, playing racquetball, you're playing tennis, you're playing, basketball, and you're not running a hill once a week, man, you got to be sprinting some hills, bro.
Yeah. Self-serving question. Well, wait, we got to hear the. Did you actually answer how you became the supple leopard?
So, a couple of things. One, as a little kid, I watched this movie Gallipoli with Mel Gibson, and he has a running coach, and there's this it's really about the loss of a generation of Australian athletes, and the Australian generation in World War I, specifically Gallipoli. That's where they had in Turkey. They had a terrible run in the Brits. That's what the movie's about. And there's a thing that young Archie says to his dad or his uncle, and he's like, the uncle's like, "What are your legs?" He's like, "Steel springs." He's like, "How fast are you going to run?" "Fast as a leopard." So that stuck in my head for a long time. And then I had a Navy SEAL friend who was shot, and one day we were talking. He's like, "Kelly, the leopard never stretches." And I was like, "That's true. That's true, Andy. 1, you're not a leopard. 2, that leopard can attack and defend at full physical capacity without having to activate its glutes, without having to warm up. It's just boom, leopard. You are alive. You have to get sweaty. You have to get in the hot tub. You have to jump rope. You have to activate. You can't even access your range of motion without doing a bunch of 50 things." So the goal was to put ourselves into a position where we could have access to our incredible physiology at a moment's notice without having to, really warm up and do all these kind of things. We should be able to put my arms over my head or have full lunge, or I should be able to jump cold. And of course, older tissues need a little bit more warm up. I'm not saying we shouldn't warm up, but I'm just saying that we should have access to our physiology right away. And that's that idea of becoming a supple leopard.
I love it. That's great. Okay. Self-serving question, Kelly. So let's say we're hitting the ropes 5 minutes a day. We're running, we're doing everything. We're eating my body weight and protein, everything great. How about a couple drinks a week? What's our thought on alcohol? And this is obviously for those listeners who are 21 and over. Is it bad for you? Is it not a big deal? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think we're unequivocally clear that alcohol is a poison. Full stop. If you're trying to do something elite, probably can't drink. Honestly. I certainly wouldn't drink the night before I was doing something awesome. Right. However, what I'll say is there's drinking. I drink a bottle of wine a night to self-soothe. And after we play pickup basketball, we have a beer, right? So working with the German national hockey team, we're in Germany and we go out for a meal afterwards and everyone pulls down a big liter of beer. I'm like, wow, okay. And they're like, no, Kelly, it's called Sportbier, right? It's alcohol-free beer. And what they've figured out is Erdinger made a really good, in fact, Erdinger sends 10,000 liters of beer to the Olympics for the Germans and Austrians. What they found was that the beer, the non-alcoholic beer the beer was a ritual where we got to connect, we got to be together, we drank something afterwards. And that's really important. And let's be honest, you're talking about being the most average middle-aged basketball players in the neighborhood. Like, put some drinks in there. What I would say is the alcohol will disrupt your sleep. And that's our big beef.
Yeah.
That as soon as that's typically when people are drinking and then they'll have their alcohol. And then what we see is really decreased heart function and cardiac function. And over time, that's a problem. So I'm never going to say there's not a time for an incredible handmade margarita. I think that's important and proof of God's love. But we should are you eating a cake every night? Probably not. Should you eat cake every night? Probably not. If we try to treat it a little bit more like celebration, right? I'm with people. There's a moment that we're celebrating. That's how we think about alcohol in our family, only because it just doesn't serve us in terms of our sleep and preparation, et cetera, et cetera.
That's great. Great way to look at it. Yeah, Duff and I are fans of the post adult league game beer.
I think you're an idiot. And we're talking about, I mean, literally, like I had 3, whiskeys and soda, or I had a beer. Like, come on, those are not even the same thing. I would argue that like the carbs that you're getting from the beer are really important. But what I would say is, wing in your best non-alcoholic beer there and see if you really notice the difference. Did you looking for the buzz and we're looking to get out of your brain, or are we looking for the wrinkle?
Yep, that's great. Okay, well, I don't want to be mindful of time, but I have a few more, and I'm sure Duff will chime in. But we've talked about nutrition, and some of the guidelines and ideas you've given are fantastic. So let's talk specifically about pre-game nutrition. So, like for example, I'm coaching a game tonight. For the athletes out there, let's say they've got high schoolers, they have a 7:00 game. What do you think is the optimal pregame nutrition ritual to get ready for that 7:00 game?
Yeah. I need the last meal you ate 2.5 or 3 hours earlier. Okay. So I want to get like something that looks like a meal, right? That is, a little bit lighter on the protein, has some protein, but, something is like a reasonable meal. And probably a lot of really simple carbohydrates, things that are easy to digest, aren't going to mess you up. Like eating a cheesesteak, then, eating a double, right. And then, playing a tournament, you'll pay for that. You're just not going to play. An hour before, we want to top off with something that looks like an Uncrustable, something super palatable, very easy to eat, very reproducible. I'm a huge fan of the Uncrustable for that reason, because it's affordable. And if you can't afford Uncrustables, you can make peanut butter and honey, peanut butter and jelly yourself. And I think an hour before, I want 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrate,
carbs,
something in there, super simple and super tasty, something that looks like Whole Foods. Then we're probably fed. We're probably good. If we need to cap off, maybe a little bit of carbohydrate in the last few minutes before we go. So I'll have our girls warm up and then they've eaten breakfast, and then we'll eat a bar or something like that, something that they find very palatable an hour out. And then right before, we'll just put in a few more for snacks. And then probably you're good to go if you're only playing one game, you're probably good to go from there. If you have multiple games, then it's even more important that right afterwards that we're getting a ton of good quality carbohydrate in to get that.
So like a Cliff Bar, something like that when you talk about a bar.
Fantastic. It's super simple. And again, we have to look at what are the sort of financial resources of the team and the families. And that's why I'll always point to, milk, peanut butter and jelly is really good. And if you can't tolerate the milk, then we have soy milk and we have all these other things. But getting something that you can drink plus really hyper palatable, very easy reproducible thing, you can start to be like, I want my rice and mashed bananas, and like, dude, that's great. What you'll see is that I like my athletes to have a little bit of routines. These are the bars they like, but really that last meal 3 hours out is magic. We just had a tournament this last weekend, 2 hours between games. It's the dead, right? It's the deadly kids need to eat lunch.
Yeah.
We see parents starting to jump in the car and going to Whole Foods. And lo and behold, my wife's like, hold up. Do not let your kids eat at lunch right now. They will get stuck at the next game.
Yeah.
You need to have some kind of like smoothie shake, pre-made that you can drink, eat some carbohydrates at this thing, like peanut butter and jelly. That's the kind of thing we need to do and really make sure that we're looking at keeping that big meal 3 hours out if we can.
Awesome. How do you feel about recovery devices like Normatec, cold plunge, all the things that are, in vogue right now? Is there
we look at
value to those things?
Yeah, absolutely. There is. We look at not minoring in the majors and majoring in the minors, right? That's really what we start to see. Is I'm like, can I see what you've eaten today? Can I see your sleep? Right? Suddenly, I'm like, oh yeah, these boots aren't going to add something. Normatec boots are great. They basically allow us to decongest tissues while we're watching TV or being passive. And full disclosure, when I work with Hyperice, my daughter Caroline has a pair of boots and she loves them. She gets home from practice, throws the boots on, does her homework, right? And it feels pro. Her legs feel better, right? We get a flush because she's just come home from practice and has homework. That's not what's supposed to happen. If we take horses and run them around and then put them in the barn, they'll die of pneumonia. We walk horses down, right? If you look at Michael Phelps, how many yards he races and how many yards he warms up compared to how many yards he cools down with, you're insane how much cool down they have. What we tend to see is that our athletes are not cooling down at all. And by cooling down, we mean how do we continue to decongest the tissues? And it's an easy way to do that with boots. We love Mark Pro. Mark Pro is a device that allows us to create a non-fatiguing muscle contraction that literally allows us to dump sort of congestion out, enhance recovery, decrease DOMs. But all those things cost a lot of money. If you got home, sat on the floor for 20 or 30 minutes, adults and kids in the evening, you'll find that that's a perfect way to start to put some load into your hips, make yourself feel better. Floor sitting for 20 or 30 minutes a night is part of our prescription for all athletes. And if you're already sitting on the floor, there's the foam roller. Go ahead and hit something for 10 minutes.
In what position on the floor? Like in the
side saddle, 90-90, kneeling, long sit. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Crisscross applesauce. The bottom line is when your body tells you to move and fidget, you should move and fidget. But really what we're after here is, can we get some long-term loading in those tissues? And sitting on the floor is a great way to do that.
That's great. Great feedback.
And everybody are doing homework, so sit on the floor.
Love it. So, Kelly, we're going to get into our final segment. We call it Crunch Time, where we ask you a few rapid fire questions. But before we do that, I want to give you a chance to promote. How do people find you? I know you have an awesome podcast. I've listened to it. You and your wife have a great one. It's called The Ready State. What else? Where else can people find you?
If you're an adult looking for coaching, lifestyle coaching and strength conditioning programming, we have something called the Starrett system. So if you go to starrettsystem.com, it's all the things we're talking about, plus, formal strength conditioning programming, even in nutrition, all those basic tenets. And then, if you're looking for getting out of pain or enhancing your recovery, you could go to our website, thereadystate.com. We have something called the Mobility Coach, which allows us to we have daily follow along recovery videos. So you could get a roller and a ball and you could, flop down in front of your TV for 10, 20 or 30 minutes. Choose an area that's stiff. That'd be a really great place to go. We have a mobility test there, self-test. You can see if you have any big blind spots in your range of motion that might cause a problem. And then we have courses and books and everything else. If you're interested as an adult and want to sort of understand what our thinking looks like at a high level, we just had a book last year called Built to Move, and it's a great place to start and see our thinking.
Fantastic. Okay, let's get into crunch time. Duff, chime in. I'm going to start. Kelly, favorite athletes as a fan? Just who are your faves?
I would say right now, one of my favorite sports is women's mountain biking. It's so competitive, and men's mountain bike too, but to win on a bike right now is insane. I love Tour de France. Tade is my boy. And then, I'm a huge, huge fan. I watch every mountain bike race there are because we have so many friends who race, including Kate Courtney. So I'm a big fan. But generally, I like sports And if something's on or it's an interesting competition, I'll go there.
Love it. Okay, this is a tough one. Who is your favorite athletes ever as clients? Who are the ones that just stand out to you?
Boy, that's really amazing. There are so many extraordinary people who, really taken their sport and seen if they could give back, figure out how to become real professional athletes. I'd say one of my all-time favorites is a good friend named George St. Pierre. He's a MMA fighter, and only because that guy has the ultimate beginner's mindset. Like, he is like, show me to be better. I'm here. Tell me a better way. It's really fun to see athletes who come in who are masters, but who also are, really open and sponges to realizing that there's always ways to get better. I'd say that George has been pretty exceptional that way.
Used to love watching George St. Pierre. Go ahead, Duff. Yeah.
Are you a cat person or a dog person?
We like animals. I've had a dog since 1998. We don't have any dogs right now. This is our new cat. He was a feral bottle-fed stray. This is Philgar from Dune, and I think I don't mean to offend anyone, but if you don't like cats because you've never been around a good cat, dogs suck unless they're good dogs. But really, humans have probably evolved to have an animal in the house, and to not have an animal in the house goes more contrary to the last 10,000 years of human nature than not having an animal. So you should probably have some kind of animal in the house.
Yeah, totally endorse that. Yeah, we got two dogs. The leopard has to be a cat person, or at least not a dog person.
That's right. Both.
Right.
Yeah, I think
very true.
Pretty cool.
All right, Kelly, best or notable basketball players you've worked with?
It's fun to work with individual players. Right now, I have a kid who I have a good relationship with in Chinese leagues named Kyle Fogg. He's a superstar. We've been working together for a while. Really love that guy. What's fun is I work with teams and, different teams at different times, a lot of coaching friends. I would say that, always appreciate the Warriors and their staff going on. I, had love affairs with the Rockets and the Wizards. And, there's just lots of good players. And more importantly, I don't really follow specific players because they'll come and go, but coaches are eternal. So I have more close relationships with organizations because of specific coaches there. That's that's my primary piece. But I'll tell you that basketball, if you don't understand how strong and powerful these men and women are, they will destroy you. You couldn't even hang for a minute on the field with these people. I think people don't understand how physical the game is and how strong these humans are and so fit they are. It's an incredible game.
And they have to do it 82 times in a season.
I will tell you that I just bought my first jersey ever. I've never worn a jersey of another human being. It's not my jam. I'm just not a jersey guy, but I have a Caitlin Clark jersey.
I love it. She's changed the game.
It's fun to watch.
Fantastic. All right. Probably our most important question, Kelly.
These are
hot or iced coffee?
Oh, hot coffee all the way. But I'll tell you, we oftentimes, so I'm not a Starbucks lover, but Starbucks cold brew is what I'll default to in the morning. If we're going to Starbucks, I get a cold brew at Starbucks.
The nitro cold brew?
Nitro's really okay. I just like the cold brew. But,
like cold brew. All right.
But I am a definitive coffee snob, huge coffee snob. I love coffee. I'm an Americano and cortado person. But
me too.
Again, if most of the time it needs to be hot, even on a hot day. Otherwise, unless it's Starbucks and it's a venti cold brew with egg white bites.
I love the egg white bites too. But a little mini, we have this segment, Kelly, called Dime Time, where Duffy and I give like little life advice things, like drop dimes, like on basketball court. Yes. The cortado, listeners, that's my favorite espresso based drink. It's like a latte, but it's better mix of coffee and milk. It's not.
I would say
75% milk.
It's closer to a cappuccino.
Yeah, very similar.
In terms of DNA, but you're absolutely right.
Yep. Duff, you got one?
All right. I want to know my next step exercise-wise today. Should I have 2 Uncrustables and sprint a hill, or should I have a pound of broccoli and then go do 100 box jumps?
Oh my God. Dude, I'm going to give you Uncrustables and hill sprints. That's how you're going to get there. No one won a championship eating broccoli, but you can't fuel on broccoli. You need the broccoli in the evening, strap it to that sore knee after those box jumps. But, really, I think the takeaway here is we were supposed to have a framework about how to care for our bodies and train for our bodies through sport. And many of us who played sports in high school who now are like, what do I do with my body and how do I prepare for this vicious pickleball game? We were failed because we did not come out of the sporting experience with the tools to be able to take care of this carcass. So that's really our goal, is let's use sport as the framework to create better families, better households, better communities.
Side note, Kelly, Duffy's best out of bounds play as a coach is named Broccoli. So he's a broccoli fan.
Excellent. So good. I think, the bottom line is we don't take seriously some of these base camp behaviors. And that's really how I'll leave you guys with this idea of, we call it session cost. So this came out of one of our friends who was the first team physio at Arsenal. And what the idea is, how do we reduce the cost for the training session or the game session? And that means that I start looking at warm up and cool down. I'm looking at nutrition. I'm looking at sleep, and even some of the recovery principles here. And what we feel like is that you and I can both engage in the same density of session. We're going to do the same practice. We're on the same team. But ultimately, if I'm not fueled, if I'm tired, if I don't, if I go sit down, if I just, get on the video games and don't do anything else, I'm going to pay more of a cost for that session than you do, which means tomorrow I'm not going to be as fresh and be able to perform as much work or at the correct intensity or an appropriate intensity that you can. And over time, we see that people who manage their session costs, and again, it's not just recovery, it's nervous system, everything. The people who can manage their session costs over time get a lot more work done and a lot more dense work done in higher intensities. And lo and behold, that's where we really start to see these differences in sort of approaches.
Fantastic. Well, Kelly, this has been amazing. We could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for the thoughts and for everything that you do for athletes, and all. You're very active in youth sports, as you've talked about, you and your wife. So hopefully our listeners got as much out of this as we did. We love this. So this was awesome. Go ahead, Duff.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say, shout out to two things. One is all the coaches out here in Marin who are volunteering, and it really is a really great calling. And, we need to support youth coaches more with better resources. They're really the key to how this whole thing works. And second, if you're not already a member of the Positive Coaching Alliance, get your ass over to the Positive Coaching Alliance and take some of their free resources, do some of their drills. You'll find that you'll have a much better experience as yourself, as a parent, and as a youth athlete. Positive Coaching Alliance.
Awesome. Well, just two things. First, if you enjoyed this conversation, our listeners, head over to the Ready State podcast. It's informational, it's fun, high energy. So great podcast you have going there with your wife, Kelly. And last question is, what size t-shirt would you like, Kelly? Because all of our guests on the Run TMC podcast do get a Run TMC podcast t-shirt. And we have heard that it's fire.
XL, baby.
XL. Okay. It's on its way.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. And don't hit any buttons while we sign off so we don't lose your interview.
No problem. Thanks, everyone.
You're a pro. Thanks.
Burke's on his feet. He looks up and gives me a grin and says, "Hey, dude, you too must be from Marin." Marin.